Hi. We can probably turn that music off now, I think. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Webflow and BuildShip live stream. Great to have you here. Good morning, good evening, whatever time of the day it is for you. It's great to have you all here. We've got a big session actually today. For those that were at my previous live stream, which was all about Flutterflow and BuildShip kind of working together and integrating, this is a monster. This is double that and more probably, because Webflow is just, it's huge. So let's get stuck in. The way we will structure the session today is in two parts. Because when you actually think about the way that BuildShip and Webflow integrate, it sort of comes down to these two sides of the coin. And it's either if an action is triggered by Webflow in the sense that something happens on Webflow's platform that we can harness over on the BuildShip side. Conversely, we can also push from the BuildShip side to your Webflow site. So that's the way we'll sort of have a part one and a part two, if I can time it correctly. So we'll see how we go. But before we jump into any of that, I think we should probably just cover off a bit of what BuildShip is and why we're here today. For those that don't know, so for those that are coming more from the Webflow side of things, BuildShip is a low-code visual backend automation platform or backend builder. And it complements these front-end builders like Webflow and like Flutterflow really well, in the sense that it covers off a lot of the full stack of development that you need to actually develop proper apps or proper websites. And I'll talk a little bit about that more in a second. It's like Webflow, very visual, drag and drop. If you're familiar with the Webflow interface, you'll be familiar with the BuildShip interface. And what is, I think, some of the best bits of BuildShip is that it isn't a black box. You, like other low-code platforms, you aren't locked into anything. You can take your code and you can always see your code as you move along through using the product, which is great. And we'll talk a bit more about that. So, just in terms of, I've shown this slide at my last session. I sort of love it because in proper software development or website development, you'll hear this term full stack, and it represents just the way that you structure a website or an app so that it's segmented enough that it's secure, but also segmented enough that it's fully functional. And in the low-code space, that gets a bit blurry because often you won't have a full stack and you won't have a back-end and a front-end developer. You'll be everything. So in my last session, we talked about BuildShip being the back-end side of things and Flutterflow doing a really good job of the front-end, and then you can sort of have a database there as well. And I would sort of say that probably Webflow straddles that front-end database, Venn diagram, if you like. And the reason I say that is because Webflow has an incredible CMS and e-commerce backend to it that you really sort of can't discount, and nor should you. And we'll work a bit with it today because it's actually quite impressive. So I'm going to start with just getting into that first part of our session. So our Webflow triggered actions, items. What does that look like when you've got something that's happening in Webflow that you can then harness or enrich or make more productive or interactive for your customers because of BuildShip? And in our template section, we have a ton of templates, and we're building on them practically every day. I pulled out two here that are particularly relevant because they are really great examples of something happening on your Webflow website that you can harness and make more, more productive through BuildShip. So there's a template called the new product Instagram post generator, and we're going to look at a little bit of that today. We also have the Webflow form submission template. So that is an amazing template. So if you've got, like so many of us do, a form on your website that visitors can fill in with a comment or anything, ordinarily that would, with Webflow, that would just go and be emailed to you and you'd have to deal with it. But with the addition of BuildShip, you now have the opportunity to add on all of the amazing integrations and other nodes that are in BuildShip to enrich that data and make it more meaningful, both for you and your customer. So there's a good video that we've just published that uses the Webflow form submission tool template and Apollo to gather a whole bunch of information about the person that submitted the form before it even gets to you. So we'll make sure to call that out. Now it's on our YouTube channel. But today, for this first section, I'm going to show you an example of a new social media post being generated automatically whenever you post a new blog post to your Webflow site. So, I mean, we spend so much time, pulling together these amazing blog posts, but it just sort of sits in isolation. This is an opportunity for you to really kind of see it a bit more through the marketing funnel, I think, through this example. So what's going to happen here, we're going to write a new blog post on our Webflow site. It's going to hand that off to BuildShip, and I'll show you how you can build out a workflow that will automatically generate all sorts of social media imagery, copy, you name it. It's literally up to your imagination. And it will sit there ready for you to deploy. And, to have that happen automatically and organically, particularly with some of the tools we have today, is quite compelling. So stay tuned. So we'll jump into that actually. So we will switch my screens to BuildShip. So for those that haven't ever seen BuildShip before, this is our templates section. That covers a huge range of different templates for lots of the various integrations that we have on the platform. But today, we're particularly interested in the Webflow templates. And there are 4 biggies. We're going to start out with just our Webflow basic API, and I'm going to show you how you can connect that to your BuildShip site from scratch. And we'll go right through the process of building out a social media content powerhouse. All right, so if we start out, actually, that's not what I wanted to bring up at all. We're going to bring up our Instagram post generator template. Okay, so here we are in the template. The first thing you want to look at is the instructions here over on the right-hand side, because that's going to give you just a really good overview, and it will often link to a video or a tutorial that we've got about the particular template. In this example, there is a tutorial video which is really good. So I'd encourage you to go and have a look at that on our YouTube channel. But we're just gonna work through the template and go straight through. The first thing you want to do is, with our Webflow nodes, they have this red thumb symbol. So the very first thing you want to do is click that and authenticate. You might also see an authenticate button here as well. It does the same thing. You'll go in, you want to add your account, which will show something along the lines of this. It's a BuildShip and Webflow authentication screen. And I have 2 Webflow sites, and I'm going to give it access to both of them and click Authorize App. And if I can get back. There we go. So now that we've authenticated, we can go and work through the workflow. And it's really, really simple. So here it's asking for our site ID. This is a unique ID, and it's very easy to find. You head into your Webflow dashboard, which is just webflow.com, and it'll look a little something like this. For this example, we're going to use this particular template. If you've ever looked at any of the templates in Webflow, it will be very familiar to you. This is one of the standard ones. And if you click on Site Settings, and go right at the bottom, you'll see this site ID. So we'll grab that, and we'll head back into BuildShip and put that in here. Now, this is what we call a Webflow trigger. Every workflow in BuildShip has to be triggered by something. And with the Webflow trigger, we're saying that it's something coming from Webflow that will trigger our automation happening moving forward. But not only that, there's a number of trigger types, and there's quite a lot of them. We touch on a few of them in some of the videos we've got on our YouTube, and a lot are very similar to each other. In this particular example, we are interested in a blog post happening on Webflow and that triggering something moving forward. So blog posts in Webflow are collections. They exist in your site. If you go into Designer, they exist in the CMS section here. So if you go into CMS, you'll see this is where all your blog posts sit. And if you're familiar with making blog posts onto your Webflow site, you'll be very familiar with this section. So is where you create a new blog post, and here are all your blog posts. I've got a couple here staged for publish. We'll get to those in a second. So that's an important distinction to make, because in BuildShip's eyes, it has collections, it has user accounts, it has e-commerce, or it has pages, or it has the overall site being published, or it has a form being submitted. Now, collections and the e-commerce section are actually very similar, but they exist in quite separate sections. User accounts probably makes a bit more sense because it's a bit different. But if you've got an e-commerce site with Webflow, all of your e-commerce items will exist in this separate section. And I'll come over to my e-commerce site to sort of show you that. So with Webflow, you will have set up your site to have one or the other, or potentially both. In this example, I've kept them quite separate to kind of make it a bit clearer. But this is another site that we'll get to later in the session. But this is where all of your products will exist. And so e-commerce, while your products are a collection, they're a collection of products that all have SKUs. Your CMS section is a collection of items that have properties as well. So that's a very long way of saying that what we want to do here is have a collection that's been either created or changed. For this example, I'm going to say we have an item created is going to trigger off our workflow. Now, look, let's just quickly fill in the rest of the workflow, and then we'll head over to Webflow and see what actually flows through to BuildShip. So in this example, we have our OpenAI creating some copy for us. So we'll add that in as, we'll add our API key into the node here. Now you get that from the OpenAI playground, which is at playground.openai.com. And you come in and you create a new assistant, and all you need is just this assistant ID, because BuildShip will do the rest of it for you. So for now, let's leave that as is. The next node we're using is a text to image generation node, and we're actually using the brand new model Flux, which is sort of making some waves in the space over the last couple of weeks. It's just been released. But for that, we'll need our FAL API key. And that's because we're using FAL to facilitate the creation of, for the use of the LLM model. That is all we need to do for now. So that is ready to ship. So let's hit ship. Now, the first time you ship a workflow with a Webflow trigger, it sets up this connection between Webflow and BuildShip. That's called a webhook. And it's always good just to check that it's happened, you know, for your own peace of mind. And I'll show you where you can double check that the connection is perfect in your Webflow dashboard now. So if you head back to Webflow and go to your dashboard, and we're here on our business blog, if you go into site settings and then head down to apps and integrations. And then right at the bottom, you'll see all your webhooks. Now, I have a few because I'm going to show you a few, but the one that you'll see is our collection item created. If you don't see that there, it means the connection hasn't been made properly. So you'll want to go back to the start and authenticate properly, make sure that you've got your site ticked as having access, and then reship your workflow. And then you should see your webhook here. It's really important. So now what we're going to do is head into our site, and we'll go into the designer view. Doesn't really matter whether you go into the designer or editor view. They both do the same thing. It's just whatever you're comfortable with. And then you'll want to go into the CMS section of your site and into blog posts. Now, instead of creating a brand new blog post from scratch, I'm going to cheat a little bit, but it doesn't really matter. If you click new blog post and write everything out from scratch, it does exactly the same thing as me duplicating this blog post from earlier. So I'm just going to hit duplicate. So that gets us a brand new version of this Crafting Intelligent Workflows, a guide to AI-powered assistance blog post that I'm keen to publish. So it's sitting here sort of just in limbo. I'm just going to sort of check through it. Yeah, I'm happy with everything. Great. Yeah, looks looks brilliant. Now, in the world of Webflow, there's a couple of different states that can happen with a blog post, before it goes live. And one of those states is it can sit in as a draft, or it can go to staging. Or it can be published. So there's sort of three things that can happen to a post that when it's created, right? So remember that here over in BuildShip, we're triggering our workflow when a collection item is created. So when a blog post is created. So that could mean a couple of different things, right? So you could push this to drafts, this blog post to drafts, it's created then. You could push it to staging and it's created. Or you can push it to published and it's created. So created is the first time that something happens to your blog post. Otherwise, it exists under the trigger collection item changed. And I'll show you the distinction right now. So I have a couple of different workflows here that use this Webflow trigger. And it uses the exact same trigger, but it deals with the different types of ways that you can create an item, whether you're creating it brand new or just creating it, or you've already created it, but maybe not set it live. And what we're going to be interested in here is with this particular item, we have not created it yet, but we should. So we can push it to either a draft, or we can hit the create button, which is probably what I'd recommend. So if you're ready to push something live, but you want to trigger a workflow happening in the background, just hit create. Because what that will do over in BuildShip is you'll have a created item that isn't a draft, but is in staging. So it's staged and it's brand new. And if you go into your logs here, you'll see here we have our item. And if we open up the Webflow trigger, go into body, you'll see this really important object called payload. I'm just going to expand our logs here. So the payload is everything that Webflow sent us to action, to do something with. It's a whole bunch of really important data. And you'll see here's our item. Is it a draft? No. Has it been published? No. So that means it's staged. There's no is it staged object. But we want to distinguish it from being a draft, and we want to distinguish it from being published. So that's why I've set up a switch statement here, which looks to the payload and says, is the item a draft? If so, go down this path. Is it staged and new, as in staged and has never been published? Yep, great. Send it down this path. And I'll publish these to the BuildShip template section, so you can be descriptive like that. Otherwise, if you push something to a draft and then push it to staging, this Webflow trigger will be triggered twice. And you might want to do different things, or you might be happy to just generate social media copy every time. But it's important to make the distinction. So what we're going to do here is we're using OpenAI to create some quirky copy for us. We're using Flux to create a social media image, and then we're returning it. So what I'm going to do is open up my logs. I need to refresh. That's why. Okay, so I haven't had it to return anything, which is a bit of a shame. So what I'm going to do is head back to Webflow, and because I'm just going to create a new item, we're just going to duplicate that item again. But before we do that, we'll make sure that it has everything we need from our two subsequent nodes. So we're just going to create a little JSON item here, which is text. And image URL. Okay, so that's just getting those two variables that have been returned from our two previous nodes. We'll hit ship. And while it's shipping, we'll head back here to our original blog post and we'll make a duplicate. And we're going to hit create. So we want to make sure that BuildShip's ready. It's ready, it's deployed, and we'll hit create. So what that's going to do is trigger that Webflow trigger. And not immediately, but after it's gone through the OpenAI and the Flux process, we'll get a return here. And we'll be able to see what magical creation it's made for us for social media glory. So we'll go into the nodes while we're waiting. So I've asked it to take the blog post that we've made on Webflow and find a unique take on it. Write an off-the-wall, surreal beat poem in under 10 words that defies logic and embraces chaos. Go beyond the ordinary and make it a thumb-stopping social media post. I also need it to craft a detailed prompt to send off to an AI image generation model, and that should take the best of the article and its unique take on it and smash them together. Genuinely, I'm unsure about what we're going to get from this. It's meant to be, strange. And obviously, you can amend these instructions to be more brand aligned. But for something interesting, I thought it would be fun to see what we got. So we're going to have a look. Is this ours? Might still be working. I think it might still be generating. Because what we're looking for is our return to come back with our items. Well, while we're waiting, I'm just going to do that one more time. Actually, I might another duplicate. And we'll publish the site. So they're sitting there in stage for publish, but we might just want to publish the site just to make sure it's pushing everything through. All right, we're published. There we go. So Let's see what we got. Might just be a little bit of lag on our logs. And I might just be impatient too. I am known for that, potentially. All right, look, we will come back to that, but you can see the data flow is happening and you can see that it's gone off and switched. So what we'll move on to is, instead of Webflow triggering data flowing to BuildShip, we're going to look at a way that we can push data from BuildShip into your Webflow CMS or e-commerce site or pages or all of the above, depending on how you have it set up. And there's a really great template that we've created that actually works quite nicely with this social media post template. So if we go into our template section for Webflow, and it's our new product generator template. So what we're doing here is we're having BuildShip trigger an action on the Webflow platform. Oh, right. I was going to do that. Cool. Let's do that instead. So where the example I actually wanted to show you was we've uploaded a YouTube video to our YouTube channel, and we're going to have BuildShip create content for us, maybe describing it, fleshing it out in words, and then we're going to push that up to our Webflow CMS. So we have a template that's very, very similar to this in our template section. It's very popular, and it's our YouTube video blog generator post template. There's a number of really interesting templates here that revolve around YouTube. And they're all very different. They're all really quite interesting. So we've got a creators finder YouTube template. So if something's mentioned on the YouTube platform, we can automate that further down in BuildShip. Similar here with our mentions. We can go YouTube to WordPress GPT Blogger. In fact, I might actually use that instead of our blog generator. Flying by the seat of my pants. I'm more familiar with the blog generator, but we're going to challenge myself. Why not? Okay, so what we've got here is quite similar actually to the blog generator, because there's we talked about trigger nodes earlier. So this one's just being triggered by a REST API call. But if we remove that for fun and have a look at the different triggers that we have in BuildShip, there is a YouTube trigger that we potentially could use. Now, the way that this YouTube trigger works is, if you're the owner of a YouTube channel, it will constantly monitor your channel for a new video that you've uploaded. So it's a bit more automated. So I'm actually going to swap out the REST API call in this workflow for our YouTube trigger. And we'll see how we go. So here it's asking us to authenticate. So we need to make sure we do that. And that will bring up our standard Google sign-in box. And I'll sign in, because this particular trigger needs to know that you're the owner of the channel. So we need to put in our channel URL. So I will go and find that. that's just on my main page of my YouTube channel. Okay, and that's going to poll that every 60 minutes. So now we've got our YouTube caption extractor node here, and it requires a channel, a YouTube video URL. So we're going to give it that from our YouTube trigger. So I'm going to upload a video to my channel. And I'll show you how it looks. Sorry, I need to hit ship. Before we can ship, we'll go through the process. So our YouTube video will come from our YouTube video trigger, and it's our new videos, video URL. It's going to extract the captions from that video. And after we add in our OpenAI API keys, which we keep in secrets, we're going to swap out this WordPress create post node for our WordPress, for our Webflow node. So if we come down to Webflow, you can have a look at the huge range of different nodes that we have. So we've talked about the trigger, which happens at the start when data is coming from Webflow. But if we're pushing data from BuildShip back to Webflow, well, we have a huge range of nodes here that we can use in our workflows. The one we want to use in this particular example is we want to create a collection. Now, remember, we're talking about a collection because it's a blog post or a page. So we're going to have a look through here. We're going to probably create a I probably want to create a page. So we'll create an item. So this will depend a little bit on the way you've structured your site. Okay. So here, on our site, we're going to head into probably our pages up here, which is all of our static pages. So we can just create a new page here with our new content. So in here, instead of our create item, we're going to create a page. So we'll go into Webflow and we'll create a page. Create. Okay. All right, let's head back to our product generator template. So we're going to just create a new product and push it to the site. So we'll add in our secret, our assistant ID. We've got a replicate node here that's going to create some imagery for us. So we'll also put in our API key for replicate. And we're going to create a product on our site. Now, we remember how to get our site ID because that comes from our settings section. Copy that in. And we'll hit ship. So this particular workflow is creating a new product for us every month. And we could change that trigger node out if we like. We can make it on demand with a REST API call, or we could just keep it in there for once a month, once a week, every day. And I'll show you once we've shipped. Okay, we've shipped. So now if we test this workflow out, it's here creating our image of our brand new product that's going to go up on our site, as well as the copy and metadata that goes around that product. All right, so that's gone live, and we go onto our site. And we go into our e-commerce section of our products. We've got our brand new truffle mushroom pizza that BuildShip's created for us. So it sits here in stage for publish until we're ready to publish it, and then it can push that brand new product out onto our site. So here, truffle mushroom pizza with our metadata. And so if we head over back to BuildShip, and we'll create another new product just quickly. All right, pushing that back to Webflow. And here we refresh. Head into our e-commerce section. Our ultimate cheeseburger, complete with image and all our metadata. Ready for publishing. Simple as that. All right, so we're at the 45-minute mark. What I might do is take some questions if we have any, and then we might wrap up the session. So I'll push back here. We won't go to that yet. So if there are any questions, I'd ask me anything. Go into our chat. We got. Yeah, I'm sorry. Bit of sharing screen issues tonight. I'm very, very sorry for that. Oh, what a shame, guys. I'm sorry. I'm here on my running solo tonight. So, all right. So, a question from Discord. So, how to pull data from an API to show in Webflow. All right. Well, that's a really good example. So, if we come back to the example that we just used, so that's effectively doing exactly that. So, here in BuildShip, we are pulling a lot of data from a lot of different APIs and then pushing it to Webflow. So here we have OpenAI doing some analysis. We've got Replicate creating an image for us. And then we're pushing that here with our Webflow create product and SKU node. So say you didn't want to push it to a product or SKU, you wanted to push it to a part of your CMS or to a page. Well, there's just a different node that you'd swap out in this particular workflow for that. And they are here under Webflow. And we want to create a collection field, or we want to create a collection. And so we'd swap that out, and we would just put in our same site ID, the name of whatever we wanted to call it, or we could even have AI generate that for us. A singular name and a slug. And if we weren't sure about what any of that meant, there's some really good documentation here on the right. There's also quite a good documentation section on the Webflow website. So under developers, under data 2, if you're ever unsure about any of like what a slug is, what's a slug, right? You can come in here and you go, all right, well, we're talking about a new collection item being created. All right, so we can come in here and have a look. And it's going to talk to us about a slug. All right, so a slug looks like that. So it's just a piece of text with a dash between it. It's, and then if you actually go into your CMS, you'll see a slug here, and you'll have examples of them. So Webflow's really good at being. Sorry, I'll share my tab. Here under Webflow, you'll see a slug, right? So the exact way that you've structured your Webflow site flows through exactly the same way into BuildShip. Okay. What else? Okay. I missed the first few minutes. Did you cover how to get an API connection where there is an authentication process to complete first? Really good question, actually. So actually someone earlier in the day asked a question about Firebase authenticated user triggers and Webflow, and I had to go and look that up. I wasn't sure. So in our last session with Flutterflow, where Flutterflow uses authenticated users, BuildShip can, tack into that ecosystem, and we've got fantastic. And if you're using Flutterflow and BuildShip together, and you're also using Firebase, you really should use a Firebase authenticated user trigger whenever you're communicating between the two, between the front end and the back end. And that just sits here under a Firebase auth request. And what that does, it just adds an additional layer of security where Firebase authentication is facilitating that security process. It just takes it out of your hands. You don't have to deal with bearer tokens and the rest of it. All you have to do is send a token from the front end to the back end, and Flutterflow has that as a JSON web token that you can just send right across in the header. Unfortunately, Webflow doesn't support Firebase natively out of the box. It can do it. It requires a bit of custom code, but there's other things that we can do around authentication and making sure that we've got the right user in the process. So if we come and have a look at our Node Explorer and some of the Webflow nodes that we've got, you'll notice that we've got some Webflow user nodes here. We've got user info, which will give us information about the authorized Webflow user. We've also got additional nodes here that allow us to authenticate the call that's coming through from BuildShip, or that we're pushing through to Webflow. It's probably a bigger, it's probably a bigger question for another session, but there is authentication within Webflow that you can absolutely harness in BuildShip in a not dissimilar way to an authenticated user trigger. It's just about making sure that you've got both parties authenticating that it's a valid request for a specific thing. All right, I want to post data to the Zoom API to create meetings, and it requires authentication. Okay, cool. What sort of authentication? I don't know, actually. So Zoom, it probably requires an API key, I'm assuming. Might not be able to tell right now. Let's do this. Let's go Zoom API. And we're working at the moment on Zoom meeting API. So it requires authentication. It will tell us pretty much at the top. Zoom meeting API. Roles. Yeah, I'm not seeing create meetings API. Okay. Methods. Master account API. Authorization guide. Here we go. So it uses OAuth 2. All right, so we're in the process of building out our OAuth 2 nodes in BuildShip. They aren't quite as simple as your regular just API key nodes. They require a little bit more backend, but they're not undoable, and they are, they're things like our Google Sheets node or our Google Docs node, or even the nodes tonight for Webflow are OAuth 2 nodes. So they require that little additional step to authenticate in. So we are doing a big project to build out our nodes and integrations this year. So I will just take all that down and I'll add Zoom to my list. I think that's a really good one for sure. What else have we got? We want Flutterflow tutorials. I'll do as many as I can. Cool. Well, guys, we're almost at time, so I'm going to finish up. I hope what you could see was relatively informative. I'm very sorry for the screen sharing palaver. If you have any questions, join us over on Discord. We are one of the biggest, if not the biggest, low-code communities over on Discord. Very active. There's tons of support over there. If you have any problems with BuildShip or just want to have a chat, we are there. And that's the place. So I have just one final slide, and it's just to sort of say that there's some things in the works that you might want to just maybe jot that URL down. I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm not you, but you might want to, because there's some cool stuff happening, and very cool stuff happening in this space. So watch this space. Thanks, guys. I hope you enjoyed the live stream. Join me over on YouTube, where I've got tons more videos covering all topics, and let me know what you want to see, and we'll do our very best. I've got a big list. That's good. Good problem to have. All right. Thank you.